Goedemiddag dames en heren. Hartelijk welkom bij vanmiddagse plechtigheid. Good afternoon ladies and gentlemen. We are just about ready to proceed, but please allow me just to make a few announcements please. If you have friends and family somewhere else in South Africa or abroad, the proceedings will be streamed live, so you're welcome to send them the following address: www.sun.ac.za/streaming. Ons vra dat u asseblief nie tydens die plegtigheid die saal sal verlaat nie. Ons is 'n klein plegtigheid vandag, so die sit gaan nie vreeslik lank wees nie, maar dit raak baie steurend as mense die hele tyd in en uit beweeg. We request that you do not switch off your cell phones, but just switch it to silent. And please participate in the discussions on social media. You can follow on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at #SUGrad, and then on Twitter also at Marties Students with a double S in the middle. Daar word van dese week formele foto's geneem, maar ook informele foto's wat op die webblad opgelaai sal word. Gaan kyk gerus volgende week daarna, daar sal videogrepe wees en ook foto's. This venue has a very special sports floor, so we request that you please do not consume any foods or sugary drinks, but only unflavored water. Die toiletgeriewe is onder die verhoog. Aan my regterkant daaronder in by die breindeure is die dames en die mans is hier aan my linkerkant. Daar is ook 'n noodhulpstasie hier onder die verhoog. If you should need medical attention during the graduation ceremony, our doctors are still off duty today. There's a qualified nursing sister, please make use of the service. As u na die tyd dalk hiervoor wil foto's neem, vra ons dat u asseblief nie tussen die musiekinstrumente sal inbeweeg nie. If you lose your car keys or a mobile phone or any other belongings, or you pick up something that doesn't belong to you, there will be staff members in the foyer behind me. You are welcome to come and ask or bring something so that we can see if we can unite them with the owner. Ons verwag nie kragonderbrekings nie, maar dit sal nie 'n probleem wees as dit sou gebeur nie. Ons vra dat u net bly sit totdat die kragopwekkers weer aangeskakel word. If an emergency should arise, please just leave the hall through the door nearest to you, and then we can all come together on the rugby field here on my left-hand side. Dames en heren, ons is gereed om te begin. Please rise and remain standing until after the singing of the national anthem.
blad van die program vind. We will begin the proceedings by singing the national anthem, which you will find on the inside of the back cover of the program. Thank you also. Thank you also to the Stellenbosch University African Music Ensemble, directed by Imtiaz Suleiman, for entertaining our graduates and guests while waiting for the graduation ceremony to start. They will be leaving us now, so let's give them a round of applause as they leave us. Hiermee verklaar ek die congregasie van die Universiteit Stellenbosch behoorlik geconstitueer. I hereby declare this congregation of the Stellenbosch University duly constituted. Dames en heren, aan die begin van hierdie vraagplechtigheid is ons as academische gemeenskap, ouers, vaders, familie en vriende diep dankbaar vir die voorrecht en vandag hier te kan wees, om saam ons Kariani se sukses te kan vier. Ek nooi u daarom uit om net so te bly sit, terwyl ons vir 'n gewyde oomblik stil word en ons dankbaarheid betuig. Elkeen in ons eie ruimte van verskillende sekulêre en godsdienstige lewensbeskouings. Ladies and gentlemen, at the beginning of this graduation ceremony, we as academic community, parents, spouses, family and friends, are deeply grateful for the privilege to be here today to celebrate our graduates' success. To this end, I invite you all to remain seated while we observe a devotional moment, granting each other the space to express our gratitude according to our various secular and religious perspectives. Dank u, dames en heren. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Goeiemiddag. Hartelijk welkom bij deze verhouding met toekomstplechtigheid van de Universiteit Stellenbosch. Ons hoop dat het voor u een bijzondere gelegenheid zal zijn. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a privilege to welcome all our graduates, parents, and other family members to this graduation ceremony in our centenary year. I would like to extend a very special welcome to our 3 honorary doctors for this ceremony. Professor Peter Anthony Jones, Professor Honorary Ian Nell, and Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman. They've all traveled far to be here this afternoon, 2 of them from the United States. We will hear more about their work a little later in the program, but a warm welcome also to their spouses, colleagues, family, and friends who have joined us to honor them for their work and their contribution to the world we live in. A special welcome also to Professor Imtiaz, who received the degree Doctor of Science honoris causa from Stellenbosch University in 2013. At Stellenbosch University, we believe that multilingualism is an asset. In the spirit of mutual respect for languages and cultures, inclusivity, and a welcoming culture that we are fostering at our institution, I request Professor Mwawande Dlali to direct a few words of welcome in isiXhosa.
Molweni manene na manenekazi, Dumelang, Abisheng, Lotshani. Kuligunya elikhulu kum namhlanje ukwamkela abo baza kuthweswa izidanga, ukwamkela abazali, izihlobo, kunye namanye amalungu osapho kulomsitho wothweso zidanga. Kanye xa sibhiyozela ukugqiba iminyaka elikhulu kulonyaka. Ndingathanda ukwamkela abantu bethu abathathu abaza kuthweswa izidanga zobugqirha zembeko kulomsitho, unjingalwazi Peter Anthony Jones, unjingalwazi Andre Enel, kunye nogqirha Imtiaz Suleiman. Bobathathu bathabathe uhambo olude uza kufikelela apha ngale njikalanga. Ababini kubo bavela e-United States. Siza kuva lukhulu ngomsebenzi wabo ekuhambeni kwexesha kule nkqubo. Samkela kananjalo amaqabane abo basebenza nabo, amalungu osapho kunye nezihlobo ezikunye nathi ukuza kunika imbeko kumsebenzi wabo nakwigalelo labo kwilizwe esiphila kulo. Enkosi.
Thank you very much, Professor Dlali. Ladies and gentlemen, what a pleasure it is to preside over this graduation ceremony taking place in our centenary year, which makes it a truly historic occasion. Standing side by side with the town's sturdy old oak trees for the past 100 years, Stellenbosch University has grown into one of Africa's leading higher education institutions. Met ons Ilfees herdenk ons groot prestaties en baanbreker uitvindings die afgelope 100 jaar. Ons gee erkenning aan almal wat die IS help vorm. Terselfdertyd het die universiteit sy bydrae tot die ongeregtighede van die verlede erken en hom tot regstelling en ontwikkeling verbind. Against this background of valuable lessons from our complex history, our centenary signifies a new beginning for Stellenbosch University. We strive to be a relevant institution playing a key role in the development of our nation and our continent, and we are committed to contribute to a society of dignity, healing, justice, freedom, and equality for all. Dames en heren, ons jongste groep Radiani versinnebeeld dit waarvoor hierdie universiteit staan. Inclusiviteit, uitnemendheid en sosiale impak. By the end of this week's graduation ceremonies and following those of December 2017, We will again have awarded a record number of qualifications for a single academic year. 9,032 qualifications in total, including 1,620 master's degrees and 305 PhDs. These are phenomenal numbers. And clearly, Stellenbosch University is making an invaluable contribution as a national asset. Dames en heren, ons nieuwe graduandi vandag kom uit 2 fakulteite, agriwetenskappe as ook geneeskunde en gesondheidswetenskappe. Agriwetenskappe is een van 4 fakulteite waarmee die universiteit in 1918 begin het. En wat geneeskunde en gesondheidswetenskappe betref, moet dit meld, dat is een beetje voorbeeld, dit is my ou fakulteit. Now, this is not to cast aspersions on anyone. But I always tell people that Stellenbosch University today is a much better university than when I obtained my MBCHD here in 1983, followed by an MMed in 1991. And there are 3 main reasons for this. 1, we are more research intensive, and 2, we are becoming ever more diverse, whilst at the same time achieving a module pass rate above 85%. 85%, which is among the highest in the country, in line with our aim of broadening access with success. And 3, we have a greater international outlook. This we also see reflected in AgriSciences, one of the university's 4 founding faculties. Held in high regard globally, they occupy the #1 position in Africa on the QS World University Rankings by subject for both agriculture and forestry. Dames en heren, een aansienlijke persentasie van ons studenten sou glad nie universiteit toe kon gekom het as hulle nie 'n beurs ontvang het nie. En baie studente het bykomende geldelike hulp nodig om hulle studies te voltooi. So we welcome the recent announcement by the state that fully subsidized free higher education and training for poor and working class South Africans will be phased in. But we also know that the need is so great that additional bursary support will still be required. So I therefore want to thank all donors helping us to provide opportunities to the next generation of talented students making an impact globally. Ladies and gentlemen, we will this week be awarding more honorary degrees than usual, a total of 13 spread over 6 graduation ceremonies. We are doing this especially to mark our centenary year. These recipients are all esteemed local and international thought leaders. Please read more about all of them on the university's website. Ons eregradiandi vergestalt nie net die kenmerke van die gegradueerdes wat ons by ons studente wil inskerp nie, maar ook die eienskappe waarmee ons instelling graag die toekoms wil aanpak, nou dat ons die US se 2de eeu as 'n toonaangewende universiteit betree. Ons gaan nou saam vorentoe. Masinye Pambile, forward together. Baie dankie. I will now confer on the candidates who were presented to me the respective honorary doctorates. After conferment of the degree, every honorary graduate will get the opportunity to respond briefly to the award.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you Peter Anthony Jones with a request that you confer on him the degree Doctor of Science honoris causa. The decision by the Council and Senate to award him this degree has been taken on the grounds and the following considerations. Ladies and gentlemen, by discovering the effects of 5 azacitidine on cytosine methylation and establishing a link between DNA methylation, gene expression, and differentiation. Professor Peter Anthony Jones, one of Stellenbosch University's leading former academics, has advanced medical science and brought a new hope for cancer treatment worldwide. Today, Chief Scientific Officer and Director at the Center for Epigenetics at the Van Andels Research Institute in Michigan, this Cape Town-born Professor Peter Jones obtained his PhD and postdoctoral training abroad. He returned to South Africa, however, to serve as Chief Research Officer at the Unit for Molecular and Cellular Cardiology of the Stellenbosch University's Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. Here, in the late 1970s, he discovered cancer's new frontier, called epigenetics, which would later change the future of cancer treatment. Curious whether cancer drugs could trigger cancer in basic human cells, Professor Jones instead found that an ordinary cell that he had treated with an obscure drug, then known as AZA-C, was beating like a heart. He discovered that the drug had switched on genes, turning the basic cell into a muscle cell. If it could do that, he thought, surely it could also switch on genes in cancerous cells, restoring them to health. More than 30 years later, a 2009 paper published in the top medical journal Lancet reported that the survival rate of cancer patients in a large international trial had increased from 26% using ordinary chemotherapy to over 50% using epigenetic therapy with azacitidine. Professor Jones, as 'n voormalige Kaapenaar, hoop ek jy verstaan daarom nog so 'n bietjie Afrikaans. So dames en here, Professor Jones het benewens die werk wat ek nou net hier uiteengesit het, basiese wetenskaplike ontdekkings vernuftig in kliniese behandelings omgesit. Nadat hy die waarde van epigenetiese terapie bewys het, werk hy onverpoosd aan die behandelingsstrategieë wat die uitvinding dan op menslike kanker toepas. Saam met sy kollegas ondersoek hy verskeie moontlike behandelings, waaronder 'n Vitamiin C gebaseerde terapie, wat dalk 'n middel teen myelodysplastiese sindroom doeltreffender kan maak. Professor Jones is goed gevestig in die VSA, waar hy die mediese wetenskap op die wêreldverhoog bevorder. Die voormalige voorsitter van die Amerikaanse Vereniging van Kankernavorsing, bekend as AACR, en genoot van sowel die AACR Akademie, sowel as die Amerikaanse Vereniging vir die Bevordering van Wetenskap, is onlangs in die Amerikaanse Nasionale Wetenskap Akademie tot hierdie akademie verkies ter verering en erkenning van 40 jaar van prestasies op die gebied van epigenetiese geneeskunde. So ladies and gentlemen, Professor Jones has published more than 300 scientific papers, launched one of the USA's finest research facilities devoted to epigenetics, and held various cancer research positions. His groundbreaking work has garnered many accolades, including the Cancer Association of South Africa's A.G. Utel Award, the University of Southern California's Award for Creative Research and Scholarship, the Outstanding Investigator Grant from the USA National Cancer Institute, and the Medal of Honor from the American Cancer Society. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Professor Jones personifies the excellence and innovation that Stellenbosch University pursues. We proudly honor him for his trailblazing work advancing medical science and technology globally by pioneering epigenetics and expertly translating his discoveries into clinical treatments, offering new hope for millions of cancer patients worldwide, and for exemplifying the innovative spirit to which every SU student should aspire. I hereby request you to confer the degree Doctor of Science, DSc honoris causa, on Peter Anthony Jones.
No honor can beat getting an honor from your home country. I'm just so thrilled to be back in South Africa, to hear Afrikaans again, and to be honored in such a way by the university at which I had my first job. I was recruited to the university. Stellenbosch University was called the University of Stellenbosch in those days, at Tygerberg Hospital, and that is where I did the formative work for which I'm now being honored. All of us, of course, stand on the shoulders of others. And I'm just so grateful today that many of the people that helped me get here are actually in the audience. I want to thank my 3 school friends from junior school all the way up to the top, Roger Pito, John Reed Rowland, and Peter Brown, who really stimulated me so much as a school student because they were a lot smarter than me. And try as I might, I never quite could beat them in class. So it's great to have you guys here. I want to thank Tom Mabon, who was a practicing cardiologist here in Stellenbosch or Somerset West for many years. He and I were in the same dorm at the University College of Rhodesia, as it was in that time. I also want to thank Professor Wieland Gievers, whom you heard about today. He is an icon of South African science. His first job back here in South Africa was a professor in the Stellenbosch University. He assembled groups of people who went on to change the world. And I'm so grateful that he had the time to come here today to celebrate this with me. Science is a privilege. I always wanted to be a scientist. I never had any doubt. I didn't have to do career counseling or anything. It's really fun to do science. It becomes obsessive. You think about it all the time. I think the key message, though, is to you as you sit here today, is always remember to be curious. Always ask why. Don't accept things as face value. So often in the world today, we see people accepting things that they want to hear, not what the real reality is. So I think that the main message is be curious, enjoy it, and keep trying to change the way the world works. And for me, the greatest way that I could ever do that was to change the standard of care. Could I do something which one day would change the way people with cancer were treated? And I'm very lucky that the work that I did here at Stellenbosch University in the 70s actually has finally realized that. So never give up, have fun, and remember, be curious. Thank you very much.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I have the honor to present you Andre E. Nel with a request that you confer on him the degree Doctor of Science, honoris causa. The decision by the Council and Senate to award him this degree was taken on the grounds of the following considerations. Through his lifelong quest for conducting and enhancing medical sciences research, Stellenbosch University alumnus Professor Andre E. Nel has made an immense contribution to the specialty and science of allergy, immunology and nanomedicine. Dames en here, net soos die vorige ontvanger van die ere doktersgraad, is Professor Andre E. Nel ook 'n gebore Suid-Afrikaner. Dit sê duidelik baie van die gehalte en kwaliteit van ons mediese en navorsers. Is ook die mediese opleiding wat hier aan Suid-Afrikaanse universiteite verskaf word. Sy akademiese uitnemendheid was vroeg reeds duidelik. Gedurende sy studie vir sy grade MB-CAB en die M.Med in interne geneeskunde wat hy beide summa cum laude verwerf het, en MD het sy prestasies in die universiteit om groot lof besorg. Stellenbosch Universiteit, sy fakulteit het onder andere vir hom die medalje gegee, die goue medalje, inderdaad, vir die beste MB-CAB student, die Hoogstprys vir die beloonendste finalejaar medische student, as ook die dekaansmedalje vir die beste finalejaar klinische assistent. So, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Nel joined the University of California, also known as UCLA, where he first directed the Asthma and Immunology Disease and Southern California Air Pollution Centers. focusing on the impact of air pollution on asthma. He went on to found the Division for Nanomedicine at UCLA. Today, this renowned scholar is a distinguished professor and director of the UCLA Center for Environmental Implications of Nanotechnology. It is a $50 million facility funded by the United States NSF, the National Science Foundation. And he is also supported by the Environmental Protection Agency for this research. Here, Professor Nel and his team practice science for society by studying the safe and responsible use of nanotechnology to ensure that communities worldwide can continue leveraging the benefits of nanotechnology without harming the environment. He is also a leader in developing nanomedicines for pancreas cancer, with research breakthroughs leading to the launching of a startup company. His specialized skill set makes him a well-respected contributor to science globally. He's a member of the United States President's Council of Advisors for Science and Technology panel for the review of the National Nanotechnology Initiative, and served as a distinguished NSF panel, served on this panel that produced a comprehensive government science report and a vision for American use of nanotechnology. He is also, on behalf of the United States, been involved and represented the National Institute of Health of the States and NNI in signing several international cooperative agreements, amongst others with Japan, the Chinese Academy of Sciences, as well as Russia. This associate editor of the top international journal ACS Nano and widely cited author has delivered over 500 conference talks and over 300 scientific publications. His research on nanotherapeutics, nanobiology, nanotechnology, as well as air pollution and asthma has resulted in a large number of filed United States patents. Accolades for Nell's scientific eminence abound. A member of the peer-selected Best Doctors of America since 1998, he has received the John Salvaggio Memorial Award for Outstanding Service to Science of Allergy and Immunology, the Harry Truman Lectureship Award, and the Governor's Economic and Environment Leadership Award. This is California's highest environmental honor. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I hereby then request you to confer the degree Doctor of Science, DSc honoris causa, on Andre E. Nel for his multiple high-level and consistently excellent contributions to the science of nanomedicine, allergy, and immunology, which have not only advanced medical science and technology globally, but continue to have a tangible impact in ensuring a safe, healthy, and environmentally friendly world.
I hereby confer on you, Honorary Nel, the degree Doctor of Science honoris causa.
Well, I will try and make it short. Dear Rector de Villiers, fellow honorees, and esteemed attendees, I'm very grateful and thank the university for the awarding of such a big honor, especially on our 100th year birthday. Het is vir my 'n groot eer, voorreg en baie spesiaal om 'n ere toekenning te ontvang from my alma mater. I want to thank my beautiful and talented wife, Margaret Gardner, for her love, devotion, and support of my career over the last 4 decades. I could not have done this without the encouragement and support that I've received from her. There's actually a special connection between Margaret and myself in the university, in that this is the place where we met for the first time at a special function for medical students that was under the leadership of an organizing committee, none other than Rector Wim de Villiers himself. Baie dankie, Wim. I want to thank my family and friends also for attending and their friendship and support through the years. My sister Sandra and her husband Gerard Swart, Beverly and Brian Serembok, Esty Mallet, Sandy Bronkhorst, Jenny and Mornay Duplessis, and Henry Miller. My son Brandon would have also wanted to be here, but unfortunately he is locked in the snow in Boston trying to finish his midterm exams. So I'll briefly say that as far as accomplishments go, we all know in science and medicine that it is one guy may get the prize, but it really is team efforts that bring you here. It takes good teachers and mentors, and I'm looking at Wieland, colleagues, trainees, and collaborators to make these special moments happen. This is also the case for the excellent education that I received here at Stellenbosch and that has carried me for over 30 years in the United States. While I can think of many exciting stages in career development, it was particularly exhilarating to be included by the University of California, the State of California, and the Office of Science and Technology of the US President Obama into the National Nanotechnology Initiative over the last 15 years. This is one of those moments that comes about twice a century where a major technology comes along and it has a game-changing effect. Our predictions was that the outcome of this is going to lead to profound change, and the prediction was that it will grow to a $4.8 trillion industry worldwide in 2018, and that goal has just been achieved. I was fortunate from the side of medicine to participate in my own research in blending the worlds of physics and chemistry with biology, including development of new diagnostics and therapeutics. This is going to have a profound impact on medicine in the years to come. Thank you for your attention and honoring me with your attendance. Thank you.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you Imtiaz Suleiman with a request that you confer on him the degree Doctor of Science honoris causa. The decision by Council and Senate to award him this degree has been taken on the grounds of the following considerations. Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman and his organization Gift of the Givers have become synonymous with hope and relief in South Africa and across the globe. An MB-CHB graduate, Dr. Suleiman's first experience of humanitarian aid followed a visit to a drought-stricken Mozambique as a member of the Islamic Medical Association. Alarmed by what he observed, he returned home and raised 1 million rand in 5 days, enough to drill 30 boreholes and supply the Mozambican authorities with malaria medication. 2 years later, in 1992, he established Gift of the Givers, which has since become the largest non-governmental organization in Africa. Its objective is to serve people of all races, all religions, classes, political affiliations, and of any geographic location, and to do so unconditionally with kindness, compassion, mercy, and respect for human dignity. Funded entirely by ordinary South Africans' donations, the organization started out by tackling the Bosnian conflict. Here, Dr. Suleiman delivered 780 tons of food, clothes, and blankets and developed a unique, completely self-sufficient 130-bed containerized mobile hospital. With little international support, he sold his home and cashed in his life policies to have the hospital commissioned. He went on to create similar containerized primary health care clinics, which he placed in rural areas in South Africa and Malawi to provide easy access to care. Dames en here, na Bosnië het Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman en sy Gift of the Givers organisasie so 'n goeie naam gekry dat die Suid-Afrikaanse regering die groep nader vir 'n voorstel oor wat die beste manier sal wees om 400 miljoen rand se kospakkies vir arme mense te bied. En Gift of the Givers het onverwyld hulle bystand aangebied. In die jare daarna reageer Gift of the Givers op die een internasionale ramp na die ander en voorsien noodsaaklike bystand. Byvoorbeeld gedurende vloede, aardbewings, vulkaanuitbarstings, bomaanvalle, burgeroorloë en hongersnood. Hiervoor reis hulle onder meer na Mosambiek, Indië, Suid-Sudan, Somalië, Gaza, Haiti en Libië. Teen 2014 is Dr. Suleiman so bekwaam in die onderhandeling en die hantering van die bureaukrasie dat hy 'n kernrol vervul het om Pierre Korkie van die Al-Qaeda militante te probeer bevry. Die poging word ongelukkig op die nippertjie in die wiele gery. Always seeking to provide improved aid, Dr. Suleiman has also established the Education Support Program, the Jumpstart Entrepreneurial Program, and partnered with his wife Zora to found CareLine. He collaborated with the international company DuPont to develop Sibusiso, a supplement providing disaster-stricken populations with essential micronutrients, which has since achieved excellent results in clinical trials. Awards recognizing his remarkable achievements include the President's Order of the Star in 1993, the Order of the Baobab in 2010, and an award from the Pakistan President Pervez Musharraf in 2006. Dr. Suleiman's quest to improve people's fate, often risking his own safety, his perseverance in the face of multiple challenges, and his ability to inspire others to be of service to his fellow man, mark a leader deserving Stellenbosch University's highest honor. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I thereby request you to confer the degree Doctor of Science DSc honoris causa on Imtiaz Suleiman for having established the Gift of the Givers as a renowned vehicle of hope and relief, for skillfully harnessing his medical training to improve disaster-stricken and vulnerable people's fate, and for his leadership in inspiring others to follow suit and to serve society.
I hereby confer on you Imtiaz Suleiman the degree Doctor of Science, honoris causa.
Professor Wim de Villiers, staff and Senate of Stellenbosch University, fellow degrees, Professor Peter Jones and Professor Rinel, parents and students, congratulations on the 100th anniversary of this great institution. I know it's great through personal experience from the medical members of your university that have joined my teams in disaster regions across the world. I'm really honored to be honored by this university, by this Senate and the people of this town. It is about building race relationships, looking across color, race and religion, looking across culture. But I'll be failing in my responsibility if I don't thank and remember today a great teacher on the 6th of August 1992 in Istanbul in Turkey on the Thursday night, who told me in fluent Turkish, and I don't understand a word of Turkish, but I understood every single word that he said, because he explained to me later on, when the hearts connect and the souls connect, the words are understandable. And the message he gave me, he said, my son, I'm not asking you, I'm instructing you to form an organization. The name in Arabic will be Waqful Waqifin. Translated, it means gift of the givers. You will serve all people of all races, of all religions, of all colors, of all classes, and of all cultures, of any political affiliation, and of any geographical location. But you will serve them unconditionally. You will not expect anything in return, not even a thank you. Remember that in what you're going to do for the rest of your life, expect to get a kick up your back. If you don't get a kick up your back, regard it as a bonus. Serve people with love, kindness, compassion, and mercy. And remember, the dignity of man is foremost. So if somebody is down, don't push them in the ground further. Hold them and lift them up. Wipe the tear of a grieving child. Caress the head of an orphan. Say words of good counsel to a widow. These things are free. They don't cost anything. Clothe the naked, feed the hungry, and provide water to the thirsty. And in everything that you do, be the best at what you do. Not because of ego, but because you're dealing with human life, human emotion, human suffering, and human dignity. Now go back home. This is an instruction for you for the rest of your life. And remember, my son, khairun nas, mayan fa'un nas. Best among people are those who benefit mankind. And my emphasis is on the word mankind, he said. And the most important point of all, he said, my son, remember that whatever you do is done through you and not by you. This doctorate is not for me. It is a recognition of my family, my children, my staff, and South Africa. Because without you, we could have never done it. The medical teams, the search and rescue teams, the volunteers, the donors, even from the smallest of schools, the academic institutions, the media, and the government. And this recognition is actually a recognition of your own Ubuntu, your own spirituality, your own good-heartedness, and your own generosity. People, this is a great country. It is great to be South African. Never forget that. Thank you very much.
Ek sal nou aan die kandidaate wat aan my voorgestel word, die onderskeie doktorsgrade verleen. I'll now confer on the candidates who are presented to me the respective doctoral degrees.
Meneer die visiekanselier, ek versoek u om die graad dokter in wysbegeerte en die fakulteit agriwetenskappe aan die kandidaate wat ek aan u voorstel te verleen. Die betrokke promotor sal telkens 'n kort verklaring oor die proefskrif doen. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I request you to confer on the candidates whom I'll present to you the degree Doctor of Philosophy in the Faculty of AgriSciences. Allow me also to make short mention that these students form part of a record cohort of over 40 PhD students that will graduate during the 2017-2018 academic year from our faculty in its centenary. The supervisor concerned will give a brief outline of each dissertation. Makosazana Princess Agogovia with Supervisor Dr. Hardy.
Mr. Vice Chancellor, biochar is a soil amendment used for carbon sequestration. Effects of local biochars on nitrogen bioavailability in Cape Sands were examined. The biochars varied widely in their properties, which significantly affected soil carbon and nitrogen dynamics. Selected biochars enhanced retention of applied nitrogen fertilizer in sands by up to 157%. I request you to confer the degree on Makosazana Agogovia.
Well done.
Bahare Bagheri, with the supervisor, Dr. Evodia Setati.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, a yeast consortium comprising species common in South African vineyards was constructed and used as a tool to decipher yeast interactions in wine fermentation ecosystems. The data revealed possible species-specific interactions that were independent of grape metrics or environmental parameters. The study also highlighted temperature as a crucial parameter to influence the wine yeast population dynamics. I request you to confer the degree on Bahare Bagheri.
Heinrich Wilbur Duplessis met promotor Dr. Jolly.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, this study investigated interactions between three major groups of microorganisms associated with winemaking, namely Saccharomyces, non-Saccharomyces yeasts, and lactic acid bacteria. It provided valuable knowledge about the interactions and how important pairing of strains are, firstly to ensure successful alcoholic and malolactic fermentation, and secondly to diversify wine flavor. I request you to confer the degree on Heinrich Duplessis.
Samantha Carol Fairbairn, with supervisor Professor Florian Bauer.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, what makes a wine a wine? This question appears straightforward. After all, most of you would recognize wine by smell alone. In fact, we don't know. Through a combination of chemical and sensory analysis, the candidate showed that the vinous character is entirely due to the metabolic activity of yeast and not linked to grape-derived aroma compounds. I request you to confer the degree on Samantha Fairbairn.
Gonzalo Garrido Banuelo, with supervisor Professor Wessel de Tooy.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the candidate investigated factors influencing the phenolic composition in Shiraz grapes and wines. Grape cell wall polysaccharide composition were influenced by the vintage and grape sugar level, which led to changes in wine phenolic levels. This study brought novel information to the fore on phenolic extractability and evolution in Shiraz grapes and wine. I request you to confer the degree on Gonzalo Garrido Banuelos.
Stewart Alexander Warren Hall, with the supervisor Professor Karen Esler.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the effectiveness of different methods of restoring lowland fynbos vegetation degraded by invasive acacias was examined, and this included alien clearing, fire and seed sowing. Treatments were compared directly and by using a dynamic model to predict long-term recovery trends, providing a novel way to assess restoration effectiveness and to generate alien management guidelines. I hereby request you to confer the degree on Stuart Hall.
Well done, Dr. Hall.
Grace Nandasora Kangui, with the supervisor, Dr. Alfred Streefer.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the study was done to evaluate cultivation and the environmental effects on selected water footprint aspects of crimson seedless table grapes. The study showed that water deficits in table grape vineyards may increase water use efficiency with retained quality. A regional blue water footprint analysis was also done. I request you to confer the degree on Grace Kangui.
Congratulations. Well done.
Erika Ilet Mulich. Ms. Muller will give the brief outline of the dissertation on behalf of the supervisor.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Cyclopean species endemic to South Africa are used for the production of honeybush tea. Intrinsic bitterness of especially Cyclopia genistoides was investigated, and several polyphenols were identified as predictors of sensory bitterness. The suitability of 3 rapid sensory profiling methodologies as quality control tools was evaluated and validated using several sensometric or statistical methods. I request that you confer the degree on Erika Ilet Mulich.
Excellent. Well done.
Karen Munyuweyu, Dr. Fawele will give the brief outline of the dissertation on behalf of the supervisor.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, for the first time, the study has identified the range of spoilage pathogens which occur along the supply chain of pomegranate from orchard to post-harvest. It showed that flowering stage was a critical control point. Treating fruit with chitosan alone or in combination with essential oils offered protection against spoilage. I request you to confer the degree on Karen Moyuwe.
Well done. Congratulations.
Tertia Needham with Supervisor Professor Lou Hofman.
Meneer die Vice-Kanselier, physical castration of lambs introduces various complications and pain, leading to the practice being re-evaluated. Immunocastration was identified as an alternative and successfully interrupts reproductive functioning of Duni merino rams. Immunocastration enables producers to manipulate carcass fatness for meat production while maintaining growth and meat quality without compromising welfare. Meneer die Vice-Kanselier, vir hierdie dame is hierdie ram versigtig. I request you to confer the degree on Tertia Needham.
Well done.
Makomborero Nioni with Supervisor Professor Adele McLeod.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, apple replant disease and Phytophthora root rot are economically important soil-borne diseases of apple, The study showed that the disease can be managed using semi-selective chemicals, which targets the different groups of pathogens involved in the disease. Phosphonate fungicides were further shown to have potential for managing Phytophthora root rot. I request you to confer the degree on Makambo Reron Yoni.
Well done, sir. Congratulations. Well done.
Irene Nyangoge Orina with the supervisor, Dr. Paul Williams.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, maize, a staple food worldwide, is often contaminated with fungal pathogens that produce harmful toxins. Detecting and removing contaminated maize is essential. The candidate used X-ray microcomputed tomography and image analysis to non-destructively visualize and quantify fungal damage, making it possible to identify infected kernels. I request you to confer the degree on Irene Nyagoge Orina.
Well done. Congratulations. Thank you.
Velma Pieterse met promotor Dr. Pia Addison.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, this study aimed to determine the invasive potential of the oriental fruit fly, which is of quarantine importance in the Western Cape. Its thermal biology, utilization of deciduous fruit hosts, and competitive ability were studied. A simple morphology-based identification tool for the larvae was developed to aid in early detection of the pest. I request you to confer the degree on Velma Pieterse.
Alana Jane Rebello with supervisor Professor Karen Esler.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the research explored unique palm meat wetlands occurring throughout the Cape Floristic region. These wetlands were found to be important because they provide many benefits such as water purification, flood attenuation and carbon sequestration. They are also in decline, making an urgent case for restoration and conservation. I request you to confer the degree on Alana Jane Rebello.
Well done. Congratulations.
Joyful Tatenda Rugare with supervisor Dr. P.J. Pieterse. Dr. Pieterse is die eggenoot van Velma Pieterse wat pas haar doktersgraad ontvang het.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, 2 cover crop species have been identified and can be planted in rotation with maize under conservation agriculture conditions by smallholder farmers in Zimbabwe. These cover crops suppress 2 important weed species and have no negative effects on maize. They can therefore be used to control weeds in maize production systems. I request you to confer the degree on Joyful Tatenda.
Well done, sir.
Manan Said with supervisor Dr. Shane Jacobs.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor. This study used a multi-pronged approach to understand the ecosystem state in the Tampa Karoo National Park. Remote sensing suggested general ecosystem stability, while landscape features indicate some decline in landscape function. This and the dissimilarity found between above and below ground plant diversity and composition has implications for conservation management. And now request you to confer this degree on the candidate.
Congratulations, well done.
Nathalie Theron de Bruin met promotor Dr. François Roots.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the candidate uncovered a whole network of intricate interactions between mites, fungi, protea plants, and also pollinating birds of these. Some of the mites steal protea pollen, while others farm fungi for food, and many of these actually use the protea birds for transport. Chemical control of these are ineffective and destroys beneficial species, highlighting the need for better, greener control strategies. I request you to confer the degree onto Nathalie Theron de Bruin.
Fine, Philip. Well done.
Martina Treurnicht, Professor Karen Esler sal 'n kort verklaring van die proefskrif namens die promotor doen.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the research used demographic and functional approaches to study the population dynamics and ecological niches of Proteaceae in the Cape Floristic region. Using data from species' entire geographical ranges, the study addressed both fundamental and applied perspectives in ecology. Notably, such range-wide investigations are necessary to understand how species will be affected by ongoing global change. I request you to confer the degree on Martina Treurnicht.
Well done.
Carla Jane Waitman with Supervisor Dr. Nieuwoud.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the South African wine consumer market has changed dramatically in the last few years. Despite low capita wine consumption, market research identified positive growth opportunities for the local market. Towards this end, this study explored urban South African consumers' wine perceptions, specifically wine preferences, their occasions for usage, consumption patterns, and enjoyment in a cross-cultural context. The findings of the candidate showed that there were very little cultural differences, however, major and significant gender differences. The findings of the study have important implications for wine marketing to these respective segments. I also request you to confer the degree to Carla Jane Waitman.
Congratulations. Well done.
Meneer die Visiekanselier, ek versoek u om die graad dokter in wysbegeerte in landbou aan die kandidaate wat ek aan u voorstel te verleen. Die betrokke promotor sal telkens 'n kort verklaring oor die proefskrif doen. Elma Karstens met promotor Professor
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Phyllosecta citricapa is a fungal pathogen that causes citrus black spot on citrus. The study investigated the population genetic structure of the pathogen at the global, regional, and orchard scales. All pathogen populations were shown to reproduce sexually, although asexual reproduction was also important. Distance and season had an effect on the population structure of the pathogen. I request you to confer the degree on Alma Carstens.
Gerhardus Johannes van Koller met promotor Professor Altus Viljoen.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Fusarium head blight and Fusarium crown rot are among the most destructive diseases of wheat globally. The candidate provided a comprehensive account of Fusarium species associated with both diseases in South Africa and provides a basis for the integrated management of Fusarium head blight through the host resistance and the use of fungicides. I request you to confer the degree on Mr. Gert van Koller.
Meneer die visiekanselier, ek versoek u om die graad dokter in wysbegeerte in bosbou aan Hanel Ham te verleen. Die promotor, Professor Ben de Tooy, sal 'n kort verklaring oor die proefskrif doen.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, we stay with Fusarium but with different species. The candidate studied interspecific pollination between Pinus radiata and other pine species that are tolerant to pitch canker fungus. She observed that temperature regimes where these species are adapted to grow, climatic conditions inside the pollination bags, and pollen characteristics may influence pollination success. She concluded that Pinus eliotii and Pinus taida hold the most promise as potential hybridization partners. Meneer die visiekanselier, ek versoek u dus om die graad aan Hanel Ham te verleen.
Meneer die visiekanselier, ek versoek u om die graad dokter in die wysbegeerte in die fakulteit Geneeskunde en Gesondheidswetenskappe aan die kandidate wat ek aan u voorstel te verleen. Die betrokke promotor sal telkens 'n kort verklaring oor die proefskrif doen. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I request you to confer on the candidates whom I'll present to you the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. The supervisor concerned will give a brief outline of the dissertation. Leila Asmal, with Supervisor Professor Robin Emsley.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, this PhD examined brain scans in schizophrenia, a debilitating brain disease. Patients with impaired insight had reduced white matter connections and thinner frontal cortical areas. Patients exposed to childhood trauma also had fewer white matter connections. These findings help to understand the cause of the illness and to identify patients who do poorly on treatment. I request you to confer the degree on Dr. Leila Asmal.
Congratulations.
Bashir Mohammed Ayat, Professor Geer van der Horst, will do the brief outline of the dissertation on behalf of the supervisor.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, in this archetypal study, Mr. Ayat conclusively showed that shorter ejaculatory abstinence periods yielded spermatozoa with superior functional qualities. The candidate furthermore demonstrated for the first time that advanced semen parameters of subsequent ejaculates can be predicted with great certainty, thereby opening up new treatment strategies for male factor infertility. I request you to confer the degree on Bashir Mohammed Ayat.
Congratulations.
Peter Alwyn Bock with Supervisor Professor Nilde Beers.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, this is too high. Before the new World Health Organization policy that ARC be given to all HIV-positive individuals, regardless CD4 count, Peter found that ARC given to individuals with a high CD4 count resulted in a 63% reduction in the incidence of TB, but was associated with higher attrition rates. These are very valuable lessons for program implementers and the Department of Health. I request you to confer the degree on Peter Bock.
Congratulations. Well done.
Namuwanga Chisampola with Supervisor Professor Sampson.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, in her doctoral research, the candidate provided new insight into the drug-resistant TB epidemic in Zambia, demonstrating that diverse genotypes are associated with this epidemic. Most importantly, the study is the first to use whole genome sequencing to describe the transmission dynamics of drug-resistant TB in Zambia. I request you to confer the degree on Namunga Kasumu Chisampola.
Congratulations. Well done.
Talita Crowley met promotor Dr. Skinner.
Chancellor. Talita inductively developed an instrument to measure HIV self-management that is culturally and developmentally appropriate in the context of the Western Cape, South Africa, with possible wider implications. The dissertation provides a thorough account of the instrument development and validation processes and depicts a framework for understanding adolescent self-management. I ask that you confer the degree on Talita Crowley.
Congratulations, well done.
Alexander Gophurst George Derator with Supervisor Professor James Warwick.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, social anxiety disorder is common and significantly impairs people's functioning in everyday social situations. Using positron emission tomography and magnetic resonance imaging brain scans, this work studied brain function in social anxiety disorder and the effects of treatment. It improves our understanding of brain changes in this condition and during treatment and our planning of future research. I request you to confer the degree on Alexander Derator.
Congratulations. Well done.
Franz Alexander Jacobs with Supervisor Professor William Ferris. Professor Sampson will be reading the outline on behalf of Professor Ferris.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, this study will help us to understand how fat accumulates in bones and contributes to low bone mineral density and the increased fracture rate seen in glucocorticoid-induced osteoporosis. A novel stem cell type was isolated and studied and found likely to contribute towards this chronic bone disease. I request you to confer this degree on Franz Alexander Jacobs.
Congratulations, well done.
Festus Kamau with Supervisor Dr. Sali.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the research undertaken by Festus Kamau evaluated the contribution of highly active antiretroviral therapy HART to the development of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and cardiac dysfunction in a rat model of diet-induced obesity. His study demonstrated metabolic functional signaling derangements among the heart, liver, aorta of obese rats treated with HART, which was ameliorated by seraglutazide co-treatment, a PPAR-alpha agonist. I request that you confer the degree on Mr. Festus Kamau.
Dominique Claire Leibrandt with Supervisor Professor Quinette Lowe.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, anterior knee pain is a complex condition. Dominique assessed the effect of an individualized functional retraining intervention on kinematics, pain, function, and self-reported recovery. Findings showed that this innovative intervention was effective and that healthcare professionals should be educated on how to tailor the management of anterior knee pain according to an individual's specific needs. I therefore request you to confer the degree on Dominique Claire Leibrandt.
Congratulations, well done.
Florian Michael Marks with Supervisor Professor Nilde Beers.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Florian showed that tuberculosis in high-incidence settings frequently occurs among previously treated people. He described the temporal dynamics of relapse and reinfection tuberculosis. And using a mathematical model, he showed that detecting and preventing TB among former patients could substantially reduce transmission, suggesting novel opportunities for reducing tuberculosis in high-incidence populations. I request you to confer the degree on Florian Marx.
Well done. Congratulations. Good luck.
Suan Mian with Supervisor Professor Nilde Beers.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the government, especially since very few men attend clinics, cannot achieve the UN AIDS 1990 strategy on its own. Suan found that at community-based units, a high proportion of the 180,000 people that she tested for HIV were men.
many HIV-positive individuals linked to clinics for treatment, and she showed that the waiting times were significantly shorter at these mobile units. These are key recommendations for Government and Department of Health. I request you to confer the degree on Sue Ann Leand.
Congratulations. Well done.
Deirdre Mabel Prince with Supervisor Professor Rubo.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, germanium-68, gallium-68 generators with widely differing properties provide gallium-68 for diagnostic imaging. This study optimized peptide labeling with gallium-68 from a tin oxide-based generator. A kit-type labeling procedure using cationic resin purified gallium-68 provided the most practical method to produce gallium-68 labeled somatostatin analogues. The investigation resulted in valuable recommendations for users of this generator. I request you to confer the degree on Deirdre Prince.
Congratulations. Well done.
Anke Cornelia Rover with Professor Taryn Young.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the candidate investigated health research reporting practices in low and middle income countries. She found that poor practices, especially related to authorship and plagiarism, were common and linked to the desire for academic status and requirements for promotion. Her work highlights the need for mentorship, training, and awareness raising of good practices. I request you to confer the degree on Anke Rover.
Well done. Congratulations.
Chantal Jennifer Scott with Supervisor Dr. David Skinner.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, an interpretive and phenomenological approach was used to gain an understanding how women and couples experience the decision-making around prenatal diagnosis for Down syndrome and for the termination of pregnancy. The findings of the study were integrated into a practice guideline to promote provision of decision-making support within the prenatal setting. I request that you confer this degree on Chantal Jennifer Scott.
Congratulations. Well done.
Derek Peter Smith met promotor Professor Dawie Meyer.
Meneer de Vice-Kanselier, inflammation in the human eye is a leading cause of irreversible blindness in sub-Saharan Africa. In this study of 106 patients with intraocular inflammation, the candidate tested novel diagnostic techniques, designed targeted treatment approaches, and developed a new clinical management algorithm. When clinically applied, these findings will assist in reducing permanent vision loss in patients with uveitis. Ek versoek u om die graad aan Dr. Derek Peter Smith te verleen.
Tashnika Tammy Sylvester with Supervisor Dr. Parsons.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the candidate developed highly novel immunological assays to show that almost half of the Kruger Park lions are infected with the tuberculosis-causing pathogen Mycobacterium bovis, but that feline immunodeficiency virus infection does not impair TB immunity in this species. Her findings have greatly improved our insight into the ecological consequences of these infections. I request you to confer the degree on Mrs. Sylvester.
Well done. Congratulations.
It is not for nothing that Tammy Sylvester is known as the Lion Lady in our faculty. Lynn van Rensburg met promotor Professor van Zyl.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, against the background of surfactant replacement therapy used in the treatment of neonatal respiratory distress syndrome, Ms. van Rensburg showed that the novel synthetic pulmonary surfactant, Synsurf, modulates the anti-inflammatory activity of stimulated alveolar macrophages via the involvement of different signaling pathways. These new findings challenge the current hypothesis regarding the protective nature of natural pulmonary surfactant linked to its protein content. The study also contributes towards significant insight of surfactant drug microparticle combinations that may be used for drug-resistant tuberculosis isolates, as well as its efficacy as a respirable compound for lung deposition in a pressurized metered-dose inhaler. I request you to confer the degree on René van Rensburg.
Thank you.
Honorary Visser met promotor Professor Sampson.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, during her doctoral research, Honorary Visser identified a novel compound active against tuberculosis. She further characterized this compound by determining the possible resistance mechanism Mycobacterium tuberculosis develops against it, and the extent of the antimycobacterial activity this compound displays against M. tuberculosis within the host cell. I request you to confer the degree on Honorary Visser.
Well done. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I request you to confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy below the stage on Rory Dunbar. Before you leave the stage to confer the degree, his supervisor, Professor Bayers, will give a brief outline of the dissertation.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Rory developed and validated an operational model to explain why a new molecular diagnostic gene expert led to a 157% increase in cost, but no additional TB cases diagnosed. The model indicated that a combination of improved health systems and obviously reduced test cost is required to ensure affordability and additional cases. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, with your permission, I want to say 2 sentences. On behalf of Rory, I want to thank the department, the faculty and the university for all the support given to Rory, specifically additional financial support for a helper to travel with him to assist in his health and physical needs, which enabled him to travel nationally and internationally whenever he wanted to, and to go to all the meetings and places that his able-bodied colleagues went to. I am profoundly proud to be associated with a university who not only talks equality, but acts equality also for disabled colleagues. I request you to confer the degree on Rory Dunbar and Vaughan, his helper dog.
Congratulations. Ek sal nou aan die kandidaate wat in my voorgestel word, die onderskeie grade en diplomas verleen. I'll now confer on the candidates who are presented to me the respective degrees and diplomas.
Die divisiekanselier, ek versoek u om die volgende grade en diploma in die fakulteit AgriWetenskappe te verleen. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I request you to confer the following degrees and diploma in the Faculty of AgriSciences. Die graad baccalaureus in die natuurwetenskappe in landbou, the degree Bachelor of Science in Agriculture. Vuyukasi Boyson. Jean-André Jordan Brink. Amorey Chantay Seister. Lisa Noreen Harold. Jonathan Humphries. Antonio Pablo Kaiser. Michael John Potser.
Congratulations.
Paulo Talent Mashaya.
Congratulations. Well done.
Diederik Arnoldus Scholz.
Baie geluk.
Reinhard Scholz.
Well done.
Martin Smith.
Well done.
Petrus Johannes van Dijk.
Well done.
Hendrik Albertus Cornelis van Niekerk.
Baie geluk.
Pierre John Volsken.
Baie geluk.
Die graad Doctorates in Natuurwetenskappe en Landbou, cum laude.
Well done. Eigenlijk wat.
Thomas Josiah Brown. Tinele Unity Flamini.
Congratulations, well done.
Jillian Kulusi.
Well done, Jillian.
Caleb Leslie Rutherford.
Congratulations.
Gabi Sibia.
Congratulations, well done.
Zimbili Bonisiwe Sibia.
Well done.
Jurgen Rolf Curtis.
Congratulations.
Indubisu Belo Zondu.
Well done.
Zia Joseph.
Well done.
A degree Bachelor of Science in Forestry and Wood Sciences.
No.
Jamaila Abrams.
Food science. Donnie. Food science. Food science.
Anneke Varma.
Eigenlijk niet. Voedselwetenschap. Food science.
Die graad Baccalaureus in die Natuurwetenschappen en Voedselwetenschap. De degree Bachelor of Science in Food Science. Robin Lee Walters.
Well done, you got it right.
Carla de Toy.
Eigenlijk.
Janine Langeker.
Eigenlijk, well done.
Zakatile Angel Makuru.
Well done, Kakazile. Kakazile.
Seku Siamo Monopatela.
Well done.
Yolanda Naledi Sekele.
Congratulations, well done.
Andrew Angelina Belakazi.
Congratulations, well done.
Celia Walters.
Eigenlijk, well done.
Die graad Baccalaureus in Landboubestuur. De degree Bachelor of Agriculture Management. Paul André Sheard Bester.
Well done,elijk.
Louise Marais.
Well done.
Ntukozo Lumatlanga Ngwenya.
Congratulations, well done.
Ludwig Jacob Steenkamp.
Elijk.
Graad Baccalaureus in Landbou, the degree Bachelor of Agriculture. Dames en heren, de degriegraad wordt aangebied in samenwerking met Elsenburg Landbou College en die kandidaten het op Elsenburg plaasgenomen. Estiaan Gabriel de Wet. Batiswa Valencia Correa.
Congratulations, well done.
Ronald Leroux. Nicholas Patrick Madison.
Well done.
Landry Oberhausen.
Eigenlijk belangrijk.
Karel Wilhelm Obermeijer.
Eigenlijk.
Kim van der Heever.
Well done, Kim. Geluk.
Jacobus Johannes van der Meijden.
Eigenlijk.
Emilia Wolken.
Geluk.
Heinrich Jan.
Eigenlijk aan jou.
Meneer Baccalaureus in die natuurwetenschappen. Sydney Leroux.
Eigenlijk.
Tineke van Zijl.
Eigenlijk.
Die graad Meneer Baccalaureus in die natuurwetenschappen, cum laude, met degree Bachelor of Science Honors, cum laude. Daniel Smith.
Well done.
Romy van Zijl.
Congratulations, well done.
Die graad Magister in die natuurwetenschappen, de degree Master of Science. Isaac Johannes Botman.
Geluk.
Gerhardus Paulus Jordaan.
Eigenlijk.
Awibe Mahanyana.
Congratulations, well done.
Ryan George Maribor.
Congratulations, well done.
And Giswa Miteleba.
Congratulations, well done.
Sylvia Popani.
Congratulations, well done.
Philemon Sitole.
Well done, sir.
Norita Swart.
Eigenlijk, Lorika.
Die graad Magister in die natuurwetenschappen, cum laude. Sandra Christine Dutoy.
Eigenlijk, well done.
Elizabeth Johanna Opperman.
Eigenlijk.
Zoe Simpson.
Zoe. Well done, Zoe.
Robert Brown.
Well done, Robert.
Richard Lynn Cockcroft.
Well done.
Isitiwe Dinwa.
Congratulations, well done.
Bianca Duplessis.
Baie geluk, well done.
Rian Kereke.
Geluk, well done.
Nicolas Jacobus Groenewald.
Well done.
Jenna Laura Williams.
Congratulations, well done.
Dion Janssen Conferrals.
Geluk.
Cornelia Erika Ines Kaal.
Well done.
Tatenda Gift Kawaii.
Well done, sir.
Peter Johannes Grobler Leroux.
Geluk.
Iseka Matebeni.
Congratulations, well done.
Kunzo Tony Mubari.
Well done, sir.
Paul Johannes Niedler.
Baie geluk.
Marina Odendaal.
Baie geluk, Marina.
Maketa Lambert Upolu.
Well done, sir.
Eileen Stockberg.
Baie geluk.
Jacques van der Lende.
Well done, geluk.
Romien van Skalberg.
Baie geluk.
Die graad Magister in Natuurwetenskappe, cum laude. Magdalena Johanna Baden.
Baie geluk, well done.
Frans Paulus de Toy.
Well done.
Deborah Catherine Firth.
Well done, congratulations.
Tanzania Tanya Siko Dubosi.
Well done, sir. Congratulations.
Ryan Jane.
Well done, Ryan.
Samantha Ann Yao.
Congratulations. Well done.
Erna Jordan.
Baie geluk, Dana.
Johannes Gerhardus Loubser.
Well done.
Stanford Maziki Dise.
Well done, sir.
Ted Jacobus Niemann.
Baie geluk.
Aneta Margaretha van Heerden.
Baie geluk.
Die graad Magister in Natuurwetenskappe in Landbou, met degree Master of Science in Agriculture. Ryan Alistair Chalder.
Well done.
Daniel John Gray.
Well done.
Clemi Twitileni Lesipanda Beta.
Congratulations, well done.
Kyle Franco Rats.
Baie geluk, well done.
Graad Magister in die Natuurwetenskappe in Landbou cum laude. A degree Master of Science in Agriculture cum laude. Michael P. Duckman.
Well done.
Paul
Well done, sir. Well done.
Die graad magister in die natuurwetenskappe in bosbou en houtwetenskappe. Met die 3 master of science in forestry and wood science.
Donnie.
Philip Paul Frenzer.
Conservation ecology. Donnie.
Vito Kitts.
Conservation ecology.
Graad magister in natuurwetenskappe en bewaringsecologie. The degree master of science in conservation ecology. The Honorary Crystal Cameron Brackett. Edwin Dane Weiner.
Well done, sir.
The degree Master of Science in Conservation Ecology, cum laude. Senior Irvin Ventur.
Well done.
Muhammad Zaid Rowland. Muhammad Zaid Rowland.
Well done.
The degree Master of Science in Food Science. Fundeka Patience Mdoki.
Congratulations. Well done. Fundeka.
Ansimase Sishi.
Congratulations. Well done.
Brandon Herbert van Wayne.
Look, congratulations.
Lorraine Jennifer Ayula Youngwood.
Congratulations. Well done.
Die graad magister in natuurwetenskappe en voedselwetenskap cum laude. The degree Master of Science in Food Science cum laude. Senet Bezuidenaar.
Well done.
Megan Elizabeth Klein.
Congratulations. Well done.
Jay Calvin.
Well done.
The degree Master of Agricultural Management. Sonela Gitivili.
Congratulations. Nice try.
Meneer de vice-kanselier heeft verzoekt hier om de opene fraude en diploma de faculteit geneeskunde en gezondheidswetenschappen te verlenen. De waterstaat request you to confer the following degree and diploma in the faculty of medicine and health sciences. Baccalaureus in geneeskunde and baccalaureus in snijkunde. Degrees Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery.
Well done. Congratulations.
Nicole Marista Gamat.
Well done.
Shannon Joycelyn Jensen.
Well done.
Dewey Jonas.
Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well done, sir. Well done.
The degree Bachelor of Occupational Therapy. Makwanda Charlotte Mbalaku.
Congratulations. Well done.
Salisha Naika.
Well done.
Thank you. Shava Joy Kapitla.
Well done.
Doctorates, baccalaureus in the natuurwetenskappe en dierkunde cum laude. Ronald Jansen van Kiel.
Well done.
Postgraduate Diploma in Nursing, Jennifer Ann Abrams.
Well done. Congratulations.
Jennifer Abrams Charles Collins.
Right look.
Lisa Aziz.
Well done.
Sandra Angani.
Well done, sir.
Musiko Rose Party.
Well done. Congratulations.
Linda Amanda Wilson.
Bye, geluk.
Francis Magdalene Benders.
Well done.
Alice Ann Pluta.
Well done.
Michelle Pluta.
Bye, geluk.
Uvokazi Kabula.
Well done.
Stanley Devesha.
Well done.
Envelva Winnie Janis.
Congratulations. Well done.
Anne Mavida Markman.
Bye, geluk.
Onjiswa Kenana.
Well done.
Montane Rongile.
Congratulations.
Philip Iseni.
Well done, Sura.
Yana Elsie Korkman.
Baie geluk. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Congratulations. Congratulations, sir. Well done. Well done, Yolanda. Yeah? Shake my hand. Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Well done. Good luck. Well done. Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Well done.
Postgraduate diploma in nursing cum laude, Christine van Holger Mayoyo.
Congratulations. Well done. Well done.
Postgraduate diploma in occupational medicine, Matthijs Johannes Loders.
Eigenlijk, well done.
Postgraduate diploma in occupational medicine cum laude, Haley Coleman Parker.
Well done. Congratulations.
Degree Bachelor of Science Honours, Heidi Nolan.
Congratulations. Well done.
Degree Bachelor of Science Honours cum laude, Ahmed Abdallah.
Well done.
Camilla Ranka.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Degree Bachelor of Nursing Honours, Shaheen Denton.
Congratulations, sir.
Nozito Lorraine Blacklock.
Well done.
Nameka Bongo.
Congratulations.
Lara Vivian Mbuli.
Well done.
The degree Bachelor of Nursing Honours, cum laude, Justine Carla Barron.
Well done.
In Interior Business, the degree Master of Science, Chris Maria Achenbach.
Eigenlijk.
Renee Bosch.
Well done.
Cofano Ribuana Ube.
Congratulations.
Helene Margareta Carrot.
Eigenlijk.
Regine Hickman.
Well done.
Roxanne Higgett.
Congratulations.
Marcel Kanenda Kitenge.
Well done.
Malo Kropan.
Congratulations. Well done.
Utlula Maluleke.
Congratulations. Well done.
Innocent Mblongwa.
Well done.
Sultan Manhattan Naidu.
Well done, sir.
Anthony Kolawole Ojo.
Well done.
Lauren Ann Patterson.
Congratulations.
Jamie Esther Simon.
Well done. Congratulations.
The degree Master of Science cum laude, Victoria Engel Cole.
Well done.
Jessica Katrina Fisserman.
Well done.
Ingo Mokaeda.
Well done.
Jordan Carla Wilson.
Well done.
Heidi Antonio.
Well done.
Ik ga nog gister in de geneeskunde de degree Master of Medicine. Yadir Bachi.
Well done, sir.
Benjamin Weibrandt, Walnut.
Eigenlijk. Well done.
Honorary deployed.
Eigenlijk. Well done.
Rashawn Karim.
Well done.
Kolani Welkom.
Eigenlijk.
Meneer Johannes de Vleugels.
Eigenlijk.
Nico Stevenson.
Eigenlijk.
Meneer de visiekanseelier, ik verzoek u om de graad magister in de geneeskunde postuur aan Hilvaart Miller te verlenen. Mrs. Jana Miller, wife of the late Dr. Miller, will receive this. The degree Master of Science in Medical Sciences. Sharon Mapuzola Ngeti. The degree Master in Human Rehabilitation Studies. Elspeth Pina. The degree Master of Philosophy and Health Sciences Education, Pauline Ricardo Lutabana.
Congratulations, well done.
Mevrouw Magister in de wijsbegeerte, the degree Master of Philosophy. Antje Hetze.
Well done.
Melvin Gundren Governor.
Congratulations.
Fadila Arif.
Well done. Well done, Donald.
Heidi Thomas.
Congratulations, well done.
Nilo Trisha Rita.
Well done, back luck.
Nick Bissett.
Sorry for looking good.
The degree Master of Occupational Therapy cum laude. Mira Hagen Bissett.
Well done.
Mevrouw Magister in de verpleegkunde, degree Master of Nursing. Karun Adam.
Congratulations.
Marilyn Bester.
Congratulations.
Marta Marcelena Nampula.
Eigenlijk.
Aina Ndilimeke Erasmus.
Well done.
Melanie Gallagher.
Congratulations.
Gerda Lynette Cook.
Eigenlijk, well done.
Marwanda Liebenberg. Mildred Lesaka.
Well done, Mildred.
Thank you. Hector Chipao Natangwe Lee.
Well done. Congratulations.
Ethel Gangu
Well done.
Sarah Mulamba.
Well done, Sarah.
Princess Ndiwe Maujuba.
Well done. Congratulations.
Lillian Dikeleri Vishloka.
Congratulations. Well done.
Cleopatra Valero Victoria.
Well done.
Vera Marina Restoka.
Wonderful. Well done.
Yasmin Samla.
Well done.
Deborah Judy Solomon.
Well done.
Tabitha Stolenkamp.
Well done.
Frida Ndeshi Hafira Rashia.
Congratulations.
Amy Williams.
Well done.
Dorothy Williams.
Well done.
Mevrouw Manchester in het verpleegkunde Koolhaar. Indonesia Olivia Bruce.
Congratulations.
Annelien Robson.
Well done.
Mevrouw Manchester in voeding. Degree Master of Nutrition. Veronique Francois Dominique.
Philip, congratulations.
Alicia Renata Hess.
Well done. Congratulations.
Tia Williams.
Well done.
James Maynard.
Well done, James.
The degree Master of Nutrition cum laude. Kimberly Jane Knight.
Well done. Congratulations.
Delilah Sakawira.
Well done.
Mevrouw Manchester in Physiotherapie. The degree Master of Physiotherapy. Lindy Estelle Roulette.
Philip, well done.
Celine May.
Well done.
Vera Isabel Good.
Well done.
Wendy Lynn Levine.
Well done.
Colin Good.
Philip, congratulations.
Maxine Nati Kerber.
Well done.
Magna Webb.
Congratulations.
Undergrad Roosevelt Samuel.
Well done. Congratulations.
Die graad magister in fisiotherapie cum laude. Desiree Amelia Mark.
Well done.
A degree master in speech language therapy. Jamie Draft Tennyson.
Well done.
Meneer Vice-Kanselier, ek versoek u, maar die graad en diploma-kandidaten wie se naam aan die voorgelees is, en wat nie verteenwoordig is nie, die onderskeide grade en diplomas sal afwesigheid te verleen. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I request you to confer the degrees and diplomas on those candidates whose names have been presented to you, but you could not attend in their absence.
Ek verleen die onderskeie grade en diplomas aan die kandidaate in hulle afwesigheid. I confer the respective degrees and diplomas on the candidates in their absence. Wow, what joy. Ladies and gentlemen, now that we have awarded all the degrees and diplomas, I wish to congratulate our 3 new honorary graduates, Dr. Jones, Dr. Noel, and Dr. Suleiman, on behalf of the university community. We have heard of their wonderful achievements and significant contributions to the medical field, making a difference in the lives of some of the most vulnerable. It is a privilege for us to honor them in this way in our centenary year. They are indeed role models and an inspiration to all of you who were awarded qualifications here today. Aan almal wat vandag 'n kwalifikasie verwerf het, hartlik geluk. Ons hoop en vertrou dat die kwalifikasie selfs na verdere studie sal lei, na 'n suksesvolle en vervullende loopbaan of die verryking van 'n bestaande loopbaan. Bly asseblief in verbinding met julle alma mater. Ons wil graag van julle hoor. I also sincerely wish to congratulate parents, spouses, family and friends with the achievement of your graduate. The journey to this milestone probably went hand in hand with sacrifice, but we trust that the reason for your presence here today made it all worthwhile. Graduates, let's give your family and friends a resounding round of applause. We've now had a change in status from being graduates to now graduati. So I want you to, we still have a little bit of light left, I believe. You can celebrate this also with our alumni relations team and fellow graduates with a glass of bubbly, or juice if you prefer, in the tent behind the Kutsenberg Center. Ons het nou die einde van die verrigtinge bereik en ek verklaar hierdie kongregasie van die Universiteit Stellenbosch as beëindig. Ek versoek u om op te staan en te bly staan totdat die akademiese prosesie die saal verlaat het. We now come to the end of the proceedings and I declare this meeting of the congregation of the Stellenbosch University closed. Would you please rise and remain standing while the academic procession leaves the hall. Dankie.
Hy het 'n bietjie rondgeskryf.
Ek het rondgeskryf, dat ek maar vriendelijk gaan weer.
Ja, baie dankie.
Ja, maar net met sê maar vir toekoms. Ek dink belangrik is vir ere doktorsgrade dat ek dan voor. Anders is daar te veel heen en weer lopery.
Definitief. Ek wil hom net weer reg.
Okay.
Want toe u afgeloop het, het hy net 'n bietjie geskuif.
Okay, is dit toe. Right dan. Okay, baie
dankie. Tot ziens. Ja, let's quickly go.